Hey, what's up, folks? Now, look, I present myself in such a way for these videos that I like to make to get straight to the point, to be as informative as possible. So I don't know how much of my actual essence shows through these videos. I don't know how much personally that I am altering to um, video form to be even more entertaining. But one thing that I've always identified as, and I found myself placed in that position not even just because of what I had proclaimed for myself, is that I found myself to be a weirdo. I identified as a weirdo, and people made me feel that way. And oftentimes, even though I feel like that's probably changing now and will continue to change, that you feel like a weirdo, you feel crazy, and then you have your parents and friends who are just normies in a sense. They'll try to convince you that that you're not weird and that you're not crazy. But I think because I know exactly how I'm going to be, I don't know exactly how, but I have a great idea of how I would be raising my children. Um, that would be to encourage being weird, to being a weirdo, even if it means that I may be stressed out a little bit more by uh, a lot of questions, a lot of noise, I don't know, a lot of kids around, just because of exploration. And as a child, the best way to explore is to be around other children, I would say. But it's also pretty good to spend time alone also, a lot of time, because I know I did that and had self-exploration in a sense, but without anybody just like directing me to do these particular things. And now we have the chance, if we consciously understand the benefits of going within to practice, practicing introspection. Now we have the benefits to pass it on to our kids, and we already see that the next generation is leaps and bounds above the generation before that and the generation before that. I don't know which generation I'm in compared to the one now, but the facts are still the same. And now we get to pass on these profound things that it took us 20 something years to grasp, and you pass it to a child, and in its early years. Just like you hear stories of kids at a young age becoming proteges to the game of chess, and then they actually become masters and grandmasters at a pretty young age, a wonderkind of sorts, and it affects their life in a positive way. Decision making, confidence, strategy, everything that comes with that comes with playing chess. But and I think a harsh reality is that a lot of us are doing parenthood wrong. I damn sure am not perfect, and I'm also not in that particular position to even properly compare myself, because I haven't got to the meat and the potatoes, the real. I think the biggest downside that I see in parenting today, and that's just wanting to keep our children silent for the sake of us, and a great piece of advice that I've received, that I mentioned in another video, is that you have to see yourself in this particular child. So if your child is all, wild and loopy and just laughing at things that don't even really make sense, at one point that was probably you. Unless you just grew up in such a traumatic era, you had such a traumatic childhood. And even more so, it may not be easy to understand, but even more so, you should be trying to find that understanding. Finding something that you see in your child that you're supposed to be grateful for because you didn't have it as a child. Alright? If you grew up hard, if you grew up as a thug or something like that, you'd be happy that your child was a nerd. You just don't understand all the signs because you're shutting them down on a micro level and not even focusing on the macro. On the micro, on the day to day, like, oh, it's a Tuesday, so hey, shut up, stop making that noise or whatever. You say that on a Tuesday, okay, all's good. I mean, you're gonna have to say it a bunch of times during that day. Then you do it on a Wednesday, then you do it on a Thursday, then you do it and over time, this child grows up constantly capping his or herself because they've been programmed. If anybody can program you, it's gonna be your goddamn parents. Say all you want about school, your parents will program the hell out of you, because they when you are see, it's good that school doesn't necessarily prepare you for life because it's supposed to be your parents' job. Okay, so nothing exposes the downfall of a child like tying it back to the way he or she was brought up. Okay, so was this child tolerated? Okay, was this child encouraged? And I can't speak on how my mom is a failure because our love languages didn't necessarily link up completely. But she wasn't encouraging. She tolerated me a lot, and I understand a lot of that had to do with things that were going on that I couldn't comprehend as a child, so I kind of took it as neglect. But I wasn't encouraged, and looking back, I know the difference that would have made, because I just always felt like a quitter. Even to this day, sometimes I struggle with committing to whatever thing. Sometimes it's in a relationship. I mean, I haven't cheated, but mentally just not committing to the relationship, or not committing to any venture that I would want to go because I feel like I need to get the home run, which is just, it's counterproductive because I know at my best I'm taking swings every day, you know. But anyway, so you want to encourage the innocence, all right? So no matter what that may translate, if your child, likes the Beyblades, likes the Yu-Gi-Oh and all that, I mean, just things that I liked as a child, and they still got it going, so I get to, I actually still get to play around, every once in a while. But you just want to encourage them to do that, because there are thousands of worse things that a child could be doing, and to get rid of some of that regret on the back end, if it ever comes to your doorstep, is that you just want to take it on right now. Easier said than done, but if I can put it out there into the universe and all that, and just let us take it all in, let us breathe it all in, like this bit of information can really change the course of our lives and children's and future generations, because I would imagine that it's such a luxury to grow up with the knowledge, like, my parents always believed in me. And it's like, when you grow up your whole life and you feel like nobody believes in you, for one, you're not going to believe in yourself. As a result, chances are pretty high. It can put a chip on your shoulder, but you can. The chances of having low self-esteem are apparently there. So, So when you go through that, you can't have low self-esteem, and also because I was starting to lose footing a little bit. You have to someday in the adult world compete with people who had children. I mean, who had their parents believe in them. Now, like, you're fighting all types of wars as an adult. You're fighting off things from your past, from your childhood, and then you have somebody who didn't have that, so they got to focus on bigger problems, in the sense that this was going to get them to their desired outcome, destination. But as adults, we always said that we're gonna give our children the life we never had, and until that reality comes up, and then we also feel buried like our parents did, and we have to outstretch our arms for that extra bit of courage, that extra bit of strength and consciousness to transcend the pain that we feel and make something out of it for the sake of somebody who didn't even ask to be brought here. Okay? So I understand we didn't ask to be brought here as humans. We didn't consciously ask for this thing, but we know what it was like being brought into a world not asking to be put here and not having the tools that hindsight told you that you would need. Now that you understand what you didn't have, you get to pass that on to the future generations, and they get to pass it on and innovate, and they say, well, this is what was missing here, and they add to it, and then they add to it. Okay, but it's going to happen in the micro. The most important thing is the next interaction you're going to have with your child or a child, because a lot of adults will tell you to sit down and shut up because that's what they would prefer to do. But truth be told, if they really had it their way, they would throw all responsibilities away. They would put all these bills, work, put it all behind them. And if you had the luxury of putting all that behind you, you would be worry free just like a child. And like, in a sense, it's like we want to take that away from them just because we don't have it. And I'm just like, one of our greatest, like, why be alive if your existence is to take away from something that you claim you actually want? Okay, so we have all these ambitions about what we want out of life as adults. We rationalize it. We find it to be pretty simple. Well, we don't ask for much. Children ask for even less. Okay? All they need is a place where they can be themselves, where they can be colorful. That's all. And somebody to believe in them. Alright? So we found a way to complicate so many things. We try to shut our kids down. We don't know, we may not consciously know we're doing it because we may be focusing on the television. I'm going to wrap this example around, so just bear with me. While we're watching the television, we're telling them to shut up so we can hear the TV. Your kid, look, check this out. Your kid's singing in the other room. Shut up. Alright? I don't need to be hearing that. They shut up so you can watch American Idol. And marvel at that. And talk about that at work or with your family. Or with the person you just told to shut up. That's the shit that you need to think about when you talk about, you know, these children having problems with depression and anxiety and committing suicide. Alright? Bigger balls than me committing suicide at 10 years old. You know? There's a reason for this. It's a huge disconnection all around. And we make it this external problem. It's extremely internal. We learn to second guess ourselves. We learn to steal our perceived image of how we think we're perceived from other people. So you hear somebody call you stupid enough, you start to believe that you're stupid. You know? Luckily not for all of us, and for a great deal of us even more so, had a chip on their shoulder and they did something about it. But as a child, that's just that's a tough thing to stomach. So I feel like me, personally, as an adult who's dealt with a lot of trauma, and I don't think people will really understand. They will eventually understand, like, it really does take out a bit of your life to come very close to suicide so many times. It just takes pieces of you away. It's like you're not all alive, man. So, and, you know, to be continued, I'm not conceding to anything. But, you know, in experiencing all of that, you know, I have the opportunity um to encourage somebody else, to give them a better, maybe a better starting point, a better chance of, with a more resourceful um means to progressing through the, adolescence, teenage years, and actually into the 20s, and for as long as I'm needed. So I have the opportunity, because as I've reflected, or I've ruminated many times, worrying about life and how I fit in or don't fit in, or what's the purpose of all this. I really think about ending it all. I seem to neglect the impact that I can have on other people who won't have to go through what I went through because I went through it. So then I can tackle the signs early on. I won't be able to save anybody from sadness, but a little bit of consciousness and presence can go a long way in the face of the adversities that we ingest. And the thing is, after a while, every loss feels the same for a lot of us. Every bit of fear feels the same. That's what anxiety is, by the way. So, you're anxious that your phone isn't where because your phone isn't where you thought you put it. It's not in your pocket. It kind of feels no different from, your car just got smashed, or somebody's about to chase you with a gun. That feeling there's no difference. The mind really knows no difference once you reach a certain level. Alright, so, you experience that quite a bit. And then, and I don't know if I'm losing you here, or because I know I'm all over the place. But that can be prevented. That can be prevented because I did a lot of things that I didn't know what the outcome would be, and also I was in a toxic situation. All right. So if you see a child who goes through these things and been in a toxic situation and made it out, the child will have a great idea as to what he or she will want to put out into the universe, into life, into creation. And then there will be a great deal of us who have been so battered, who've been just beaten down by it so badly that that's kind of all they can produce. So it's good to live long enough to see the story not be the same for your descendants, for your child. There's much more to life than just suffering. I think suffering is a great part of life, but there's a lot more to it. So I will wrap this up because I know that I didn't hit every point. Like, I'm all over the place. It's hard for me to really grasp all that I'm trying to say right now because this is on the fly and I didn't rehearse. Is that the best thing that you can do for your child is to encourage him, encourage her. Okay? I understand that we have all of these apprehensions and reluctancy because we don't want them to find hurt like we had it. Because, in a way, obviously, when they experience it, we're definitely going to internalize it. So, in a way, we're trying to stop our own hurt. But we have to see the children in us. We have to find that link. So to be both understanding and protective. And I understand that we find a way to fear and talk down on things that we don't understand. But it's the norm for somebody else. And when you speak of human decency and you speak of being united, it's meeting people where they are, even if it's uncomfortable. It doesn't have to turn into a fight. It doesn't have to turn into a dictatorship just because it's your children. It's actually very much beneficial for you to let your children take you on a trip. For fear that you get stuck in your old ways and you never actually get around to doing what mattered to you. And I'm sure many people who may watch this, or many people who have existed, can attest to the fact that their kids will take them places they didn't even know they needed to go. Alright? Because the child knows best. Alright? You get so caught up in how small the child is, how conscious the child is. But all it did was reveal to you that you're so smart that you found a way to make an idiot out of yourself. By not listening to the things that lit you up as a child. There's hope. There's short-term memory for the things that are a burden. You know, there's imagination. There's creating out of thin air. It's everything not making sense. It's making mistakes. All of it is worth it. Okay? So encourage the arts. More importantly, if we're talking about encouraging children. Because I still feel like when we encourage children, we want to encourage them to do great things and things that's probably not going to end up being a waste. Let's face it. You know, women still are dealing with a lot of dead ends. And when I say dead ends, it's like, you know, when you anticipate what life would be like having a boy, you're like, oh, well, I could put him in baseball, football, NBA. Basketball. He may end up making it to the league in one of them things. But when you're dealing with a girl, you think completely, you think differently. So you may be thinking like, I put her in basketball, softball, cheerleading. But it's not going to get them very far. Alright? And if the reasons are obvious, it's nothing that's because this is a man's world type of thing. It's the money. The money talks, the entertainment levels, all of that. I understand that, and I fight for women's rights because my daughter is going to inherit this earth. So, I don't really have a choice. So I'm not going to talk down on women in that regard. But we know what it is. So when I think about raising my child, I got to make sure that I don't get her into conventional things. We may have to take a different route. We're going to have to take a different route in regards of getting her into sports and things like that. Now, sports is definitely important, but as far as dreaming bigger and not trying to cap my daughter's potential. Because it's much easier for a woman's potential to be capped than a man's, I believe. A man could just be walking down the street and he can work himself into a promotion. Like, literally, construction outside of this building. You go over there with the right stuff on, ask them for a job, they'll give you one. Alright? A woman? Probably not. Alright? For obvious reasons, but this forces you to think in a more intricate way. So even more so with our daughters, but children in general, you got to encourage them to just every little weird thing that they like to do, man. Whatever little quirk that they have going for them, explore that and get them to want to know more about it, and let them teach you. And because children are going to be programmed either way. in any event, children are going to be programmed. So if you think that these little things that you can do in their life won't make a difference, you're wrong. Because think about the little negative things that occurred in their life that you had a hand in, and look how that turned out. All right. I've seen some things as a child that's still sticking with me to this day. It still messes with me. All right. So that's it. Protect the weirdo, encourage the weirdo, and like and subscribe.